Okay, so this broadcast is a little bit about Advaita, and I am by no means an expert, but it's a powerful principle, and I've been wanting to do a little video on it. So it comes up in yoga and Eastern traditions, especially Hinduism, and Advaita means I guess the closest literal definition would be non-duality. So what exactly does that mean, and why is it such an important principle? Well, in the context of yoga, yoga practice in the West, we kind of think of it as a physical practice. But there is a spiritual aspect. I use that term cautiously, a spiritual aspect to yoga, which reflects Advaita. So yoga, the word yoga, is often translated as meaning union, which implies a kind of linking up of two separate things. And you could say that if we perceive the individual and its soul as a separate entity, and it's trying to get unified with the higher, greater deity, we could say the unification of the individual soul with God is what yoga is about. You know, the famous painting in the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel where God is reaching out and touching Adam and the fingers touch, you could say that's a artistic expression of this principle. So in yoga, there's an idea that there's a striving towards cultivating or bringing about this union. Now, a way that my yoga teacher looked at this, which I think is very thought-provoking, which is rather than using the term union, why don't we say unity? Let's say yoga really means unity. And let's say that there's an existing unity within which all phenomena occur. Okay, so most of us, we kind of just take it for granted. We exist in a perception of reality where we are separate, distinct individuals operating in a multifaceted world with millions of other separate, distinct individuals. We're kind of isolated in a sense. We have a distinct boundary between our bodies and everyone else's bodies. And you could say from an Advaitin perspective, from an Advaitic perspective, that's illusory. It's an illusion that most of us participate in, whereby we consider ourselves to be separate, distinct individuals. And what Advaita says is that we're not separate and distinct. We're all really unified. And a term that's sometimes used to represent this unified whole is the self, capital S. You could say God, you could say the infinite. One of the things you quickly find is that when you're talking about these things, words are not really adequate for describing what we're trying to talk about, because words are limiting in a sense, and they have to be defined, and what we're talking about kind of transcends intellectual verbiage about it. So these things are beyond, God transcends all earthly phenomena. And of course, if you're an atheist, this will have no relevance for you. But if you could be an atheist and use another term, like let's say probability, instead of God or the self or some kind of what quote unquote spiritual term. One of the things that happens with Advaita is you quickly see that there's something that's transcendental to all phenomena, all thought, all worldly experience. And what's suggested by Advaita is that this unity is always here. And the only thing is are we aware of it or are we not aware of it? And in the Eastern tradition, Hinduism and within Buddhism, there's a history of occasionally individuals becoming aware of the truth of this principle. So most of us are not completely aware of it, but there's some indication that there are others who have become aware of it. Now, you could say, well, these are just charlatans who are talking about a bunch of nonsense. But I think if you research the matter, you'll find that there are qualities that can be discerned within individuals who claim or who express this principle, and it can be recognized and verified, even if you're not in that state yourself. There's a few really well-known teachers on this topic. One is Ramana Maharshi, famous Indian saint. Another, Nisargadatta Maharaj, great. He's written a book, I Am That. Ramana Maharshi, there's a Be As You Are. That's a great book. And then, since their time, let's see, Papaji is a very interesting character who was a devotee of Ramana Maharshi. And a really excellent work was written about him by David Godman. It's called, I think it's called Nothing Ever Happened. Nothing Ever Happened is the title of it. 3-volume work, excellent work. Papaji was quite a character. One of these individuals who shifted into this consciousness of the unity of all things, and he had quite a career of having the ability to bring this awareness about in others. At least temporarily. Up until, say, 50 years ago, this phenomenon has been considered to be pretty uncommon. Now, we do have a lot of folks in the modern day claiming to be awake or enlightened, and of course, a lot of those folks are full of crap. But there are some people who are awake. There's an interesting website. It's called Buddha at the Gas Pump. You might find that interesting. The gentleman there interviews folks who have had awakening, quote-unquote awakening experiences, and you can get an idea of what I'm talking about there. Tony Parsons is a really interesting guy, a British guy. You might check him out. Good stuff there. So anyway, yoga attempts to bring about this union. But if we look at yoga as unity rather than union, you could say this unity already exists. And there's nothing that can be done that's going to bring it about. Even the idea that you're going to shift your individual consciousness so that it can recognize this overall unity suggests that there's some distinction. So that becomes a faulty argument. It's kind of like as long as you're reaching for something, you're reaching. And therefore, as long as you consider yourself separate from this object that you're reaching, you could say you're not in a state of unified consciousness. And at the point that you do recognize you are unified with everything, then there's nothing really to reach anymore, right? So it's said that some techniques like meditation, yoga, spiritual practices, prayer, devotion can, in a sense, prepare one such that this consciousness can dawn. My friend over at Buddha at the Gas Pump, Rick Archer, he has a nice reference he makes. The idea is that you can't make an accident happen. Like, let's say we say awakening to the reality of the unification of all things. Let's say you can't make that happen for yourself. But let's say you can't make that accident happen, but you can make yourself accident prone. So there's kind of a preparation that can occur, perhaps, whereby there may be a greater chance that you'd shift into this consciousness. There's a couple of approaches that people try. It's often said that associating yourself with someone who is in this state is probably the best or easiest way to bring it about in yourself. And any of you who have had these moments of being in the zone, kind of transcendental moments in nature, perhaps making love, so there's a variety of ways that this quality can come about. For most of us, maybe it's happened once or twice in our lives, and it's a moving experience. We don't give it too much attention. But what if that quality is something that's accessible all the time? And what if that might affect the way you interact with the world? What would be your approach to the world if you honestly, at the deepest possible level, recognize that you are one with everything? How would that affect the way you interact with the world? how would that affect the way you look at others? Would you judge others the same way? Would you be as likely to have negative events with others? You know, once you recognize that there isn't really an other, there is no other. It's all unified. Do you think that perhaps that might affect the way you interact with what appears to be other? So anyway, it's just a little reference to Advaita or non-dualism. Would love to hear your thoughts and comments on it. It's a powerful principle. There can be people who have experienced this found through a variety of religions, though they might not use this vocabulary to describe the quality. So it's not limited to Hindus or Buddhists, but I think you would find that if the person or apparent individual is in this state, they would manifest very similar qualities. Some of those would be, you know, love, peacefulness, kindness, not a sappy kind of fake sweetness either. You know, these people can be hard as a stone if it's required in certain circumstances. But it's almost as if they kind of express this transcendental quality in the way they interact with the world, and then it has transformative effects upon the people that are around them. Pretty amazing stuff. There's an interesting woman, Amaji. She comes to the United States, sometimes called the Hugging Saint. She makes trips to the U.S. Every year, and she hugs thousands and thousands of people. I consider her to be one of these folks who's in this state. There's a few around the world, and some people think that more of us are going to start shifting into that kind of awareness very soon. So would love to hear your thoughts on these things. And you know, Eckhart Tolle's another one who talks about these things. So thanks for listening, and please share your thoughts on these issues, and look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.